Hi, so welcome to this video. In this video, we're just going to go through a couple of examples of sketching functions using a table of values. Okay, so if you look at this first example here, what they're giving us is a cubic function. Okay, and so what we've got is, back of our head is we want to think about how that cubic function looks, right? And so this is something that we've talked about before, and that cubic function kind of has that sort of sideways S look to it, right? So we kind of have an idea of what we're working towards. Now, this is not your basic cubic function. This has this -1 on the inside of that function, so that's going to change the look of it a bit, but it's still going to have that overall cubic look to it, all right? So let's say that they gave you these X values to use, okay? If they don't give you X values to use, then you'll just choose some X values for yourself. Make sure you always look at some negatives, 0, and positives just to balance that graph out. And then what you're going to do is you're going to just calculate what you get for each of using each of these inputs. So here I'm looking at what is g of -2. All right, and so I'm going to go into that g function and I'm going to replace the x with a -2, and I'm going to simplify that down, and that's -3 cubed, and that's -27. So -27 is my output value when I use an input of -2. Then you're going to repeat that process with the -1, the 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so let's just fill these in real quick. Remember, you could use your calculator here if you needed to, or you could challenge yourself with not using the calculator. Okay, and these are our output values that we get. So remember, each of these is just an input-output point. So when I have an input of -2, I have an output of -27. When I have an input of 1, I have an output of 0. Okay, and so then when we graph this, we're going to just get a little sketch here of what happened. So just think about marking off your numbers on a grid or some graph paper if you have that handy. And -2, -27 is going to be way down. Okay, there. Okay, let's sort of pretend that this is -27 way down here. Okay. And then -1, -8 will be maybe somewhere in here. We've got 0, -1, which would be just under the origin there. Then 1, 0, 2, 1. Let's see, I'm going to lower that one just a little bit. It is a little bit easier when you have some graph paper. And then 3, 8 would be a little higher. And then 4, 27 would be way up there. Once again, let's kind of just pretend that this is the 27 way up there, okay? And then you're going to just sketch your graph by filling in these points. All right, and then you have your g of x function, okay? So like I said, it has that cubic look to it. It's shifted over to the right one, so it has a little shift in there, but it still has that general cubic look to it. All right, so let's look at this next example here. This is a rational function. And a rational function we've talked about, let's see, I'll write it really small here real quick. Your rational functions are like your y equals 1 over x. And we've talked about how those sort of look split, right? You've got two curves. Okay, and so they have those vertical asymptotes that are breaking up the graph and causing those different changes. Okay, so this is a rational function. Okay, and we have this +3 in here. We've got a negative sign in here. So there's some changes to it. So it's not going to look exactly like that basic rational function, but it's going to have that general look to it. All right, so it's always a good idea to be able to identify what type of function you're working with, so you have a general idea of how this is going to look and and how you should go about getting the graph. So on this one, we made a table of values. Now notice here that my input is t because I'm using an input value of t into the function. All right, so I labeled my chart with a t. And then I'm going to calculate those output values. So I'm going to go into my C function and I'm going to put in a -5. And so that's going to be negative, and I have 1 over, and then it's going to be -5 plus 3. And then I just need to simplify this down. So I can think of that negative being in the top with that 1, and then I'll have a -2 on the bottom, and then negative divided by negative is positive. So that is a +1/2. So that's my output value there for using a -5. All right, and then you're just going to repeat the process with the -4 and the -7/2 and so forth and so on. Okay, so you're going to get a 1 and then you're going to get a 2. When you plug in the 3, you get undefined. Let's talk about that one. Sorry, -3, you get undefined. Okay, and so what's happening here is I'm putting a -3 in the bottom. And then I have -1 over 0. And anytime we have that 0 in the bottom of a fraction, remember that is undefined. All right, so this is actually going to create an asymptote, a vertical asymptote right there on that graph. Okay, when we use the -5/2, we get -2, then -1/3, and we get -1/4. And then we get -1/5. Once again, you could use your calculator to find all of those if you needed some help with that, or challenge yourself to do it without the calculator. All right, and then on your sketch, you just mark off some x values here. And then we're going to just plot some points. So we've got -5 1/2. So we're going to be just barely above that x-axis, okay? And then at -4, we're going to go a little higher, -7/2, which is like -3.5. We're just a little bit higher. At -3, it's undefined. So that is going to be that vertical asymptote, okay? And this is something we'll learn more about as we progress in the semester. At -5/2, we're at -2. So that's going to be kind of like down here. And then I'm just going to just kind of continue going up through these really quickly here. Okay, so we end up with a curve that's doing something like this on the left, and a curve on the right that's doing something kind of like this. A little messy there. All right, and so we do have these two curves, okay, and you can see that asymptote is sort of breaking that graph into two parts, and you can kind of see also that that asymptote is steering the left one to go up and the right one to go down. Like I said, we'll learn a lot more about these as we go, but the idea behind what you're doing right now is you're looking at a function, deciding what type of function you have, okay, just by looking at the type of function they gave you. Is it cubic? Is it quadratic? Is it a square root? So forth. And then you're just using a table of values to generate a graph. Okay. And I will see you guys in the next video.